here with the Marketing Academy at Cannes, having an amazing time. And Cannes is a place where people celebrate the highs, show their best work, and there's a lot of, everything in my life is wonderful. All the work is wonderful. You know, I know everything about AI. And this is not that kind of chat. The Marketing Academy believes in stimulating very real conversations. So today we're going to have what we call a bare-faced chat. And I am the luckiest person in the world to be able to be interviewing Colleen DeCourcy. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you. I feel like the luckiest person.
No. This is you, and you're answering. So, easier. But can you start by just telling us who you are, what you do?
Of course. Colleen DeCourcy. I am the Chief Creative Officer and the acting CMO at Snap Inc. And my job really is to create a brand that guides everything from the products that we create to the way that we show up for our community, the way we engage with our clients, the way we sell our products, and bring that out into the world in a meaningful way to set a mission for the company and then illustrate to everyone else how that is a benefit to them and how we live that mission.
And I bet everyone's out there going, she's been such a success, creative leader, not director, creative leader of the decade. It's all been smooth sailing. It's all been perfect. But I'd love to know about a difficult time that you had and how you navigated that.
Yeah. I think probably, as you know, there are so many difficult times we go through. But I think one of the ones that tested me the most and probably gave me the most growth was my transition into leadership at Wieden Kennedy. I arrived there as a surprise. Dan was looking for a leader to take on the company. As many of you know, Dan passed last year of Alzheimer's. And he wanted someone who could both manage the creative and the business, which it's like a big ask, right? And when I arrived, I arrived in Portland, Oregon. I left my home, my daughter who was in college and did not want to leave where she was at college. And so our joke is always she went to college, but I left home. And moved across the country to a place I did not know, to work with a group of people I did not know who did not know me. And my very first day was a big surprise. There were 600 people gathered in the atrium, and Dan walked out and said, "I have a big surprise for you." It was a new leader. And you'll understand this. His explanation was, and she's digital, which to a bunch of traditional, and a woman. And I was like, wow, thank you. Now we know my qualifications, but it mattered to him. And it was a journey for me to basically earn the trust of a group of people who were insular, who usually promoted from within, and then to go in at the top and not have worked your way up through the system. Yeah. And I had never quite encountered that kind of situation because I'd grown up 11 years at Omnicom. Yeah. Even if I moved from a BBDO to a TBWA, people knew who I was and where I was coming from and what my values were. So that tested me. It tested me as a person, tested me as a mother, because I left my child on the other side of the country. And it tested me as a professional. Because as a creative director, your job is to just come up with a great creative idea. And all of a sudden, because Dan believed that it was a creative business and a creative person had to run the business, I had to take on a bunch of new skills, remain a leader, ingratiate myself to a group of people that did not expect to see me. And so the next decade, literally, I grew in immeasurable ways, but I also think it took a real toll.
Yeah.
Managing my sense of fraudulence, which I think we all have, with learning new skills, with being in a place I knew no one. It was formative.
Yeah. What kinds of things spurred you on through that? Was it the challenge? What I can just imagine all of that.
Yeah.
But what helped?
What helped? Certain people there, I will say Dave Lure, who was Dan Weidel's business partner, he wrapped himself around me and protected the integrity of what we were trying to do.
That's great.
He didn't make it about protecting me, because we all know that can be dangerous in itself for a person, but the integrity of what we were trying to do helped. And then as I got my feet under me and I realized the only magnetic north I could really point myself at was I would tell the truth.
Yes.
I would show up with my authentic self, and I would jump over any hurdle to assist and lift this company. And if my goodwill and my smarts were enough, I would be enough. And then as I started to get some successes, I think the thing that surprised me is I started to feel a little bit like, all right, I'll show you.
Yeah.
And I think that a little bit of that, we all need to kind of feel that sometimes. So that helped. The pressure helped me perform.
I completely understand. And that singular thought, I hope people take that away of, I am enough.
Yes.
And I'm all I can be.
Yes.
Is a platform for that confidence boost and go further. I'm so pleased you put it that way. I was curious about, I really understood what Dan was doing in terms of preserving the creative integrity and having creatives as leaders. I'm wondering what you found most difficult in that step up.
Honestly, learning how to work in Excel. No, I mean, yes, learning how to run a P&L and a spreadsheet. I mean, the job of a leader is so much more than just having good ideas. Your ideas almost don't matter. It's what everyone else's are. The idea of removing my ego from the equation entirely. And that did take, you can say that you are, but until you honestly believe that you are enough, it's impossible to remove your ego from the equation. And to be able to step into a room and know that my job is to look around and figure out in that room who will benefit from my help in this moment.
Right.
And then not just help to be helpful. I wasn't everyone's mother, which is an easy trap to fall into, or their father, I suppose. But I do think I had a tendency to want to fix, but to say I'm enough. And so how do I help you get to this common goal that we've already all stated we're after? That was the biggest transition, because as a creative director, you were often wheeled in to be the special person in the room.
Yes.
And I had to push that down and pull everyone forward. And it was the first time I felt I had really lifted an entire group of people. It was such a good feeling. I went home that night and slept like I had not slept since the day I'd taken.
Do you remember what it was? What was the situation?
I do. We were in a pitch meeting, and I could tell that somewhere there had been a miscommunication. And that we were not addressing a problem that someone had walked into the room needing addressed. Oh, wow. And I had a ton of people who'd done a lot of great work, and I was in that situation. Again, as a creative leader, you never undermine your people in a room. I mean, you never undermine your people in a room as a leader.
Yes.
But you can't cast doubt on a creative idea because they're hard enough to buy. But in this instance, I had to say, you know what? I think despite everyone's best efforts, we may not have all the information we need. Right. And really then, in front of a room of people, conduct an extraction of how we could help. And then I just called a coffee break, and we quickly scrummed. And I said, look, I think this is the shape of this. We don't have time to have, but if you can add on that, you tap me and we will just go through in the room and we're going to trust each other. And then at the end of the meeting, we had some scripts that normally you would have presented as the answer, which I already knew they were not the answer. And so I really just wanted to show that we were a team who could adapt and evolve quickly. And I said, look, these aren't the right thing, but I want you to understand how much we care. So we're all just going to take turns reading through these scripts. And we had a laugh, and we laughed, and people stumbled, and we fell, and they're like, they're not the right idea, but we do love you guys. And we lived to fight another day. And I thought, okay, I didn't walk out with a sale.
Yeah.
But I walked out with a team.
Yes.
You know?
Well, as a former client, I can tell you that kind of thing always really impressed me because listening, the agency relationship, listening to each other.
Agreed.
And you were demonstrating that in that, which is incredible. And this idea of it's not about you and turning your attention outward and seeing what's needed, it's massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely
It
massive.
It was a growth moment.
Now, I'm sure you had to deal with difficult people, both in the agency, outside the agency, at Snap. Any tips? I feel like I have a whole coaching practice based on people who have difficult people in their life to deal with.
Yes.
Can you tell us about one of yours and any ways you found it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very simple person. And I find the thing that helps me when I really cannot understand why someone is being so difficult is one, I just always start from assuming best intention.
Yes.
Because with that comes an expectation that you don't expect that person to let you down. Setting a goal of, I'm just going to trust you. So don't let either of us down. And then trying to dig in on what outside the room, outside the moment, might be guiding this person's behavior.
Right.
Is it fear? Is it a lack of clarity on their role? Is it that there's so much at stake that you don't know? Did they just have a bad day? But honestly, with a difficult person, I often find taking the topic we're trying to attack off the table.
Yes.
And starting somewhere else.
Right.
What's going on? How do we, figure this out? And I find that works a lot.
Yeah.
I also find often with a very difficult person, particularly in a situation if they don't work for you, but they are a partner, is I just, here, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Until you're ready to take me down, let's just talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You hold the knife. Here's my neck.
Right.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find it diffuses the situation a little bit.
It does. And I'm sure people feel your energy. People sense positive intent.
Yeah.
People sense when you're the one coming in with barriers.
Yeah.
If you control that.
Yes. And if you have an idea of this is a hard one. Because I know you always walk into a conversation or a negotiation. Everyone always tells you, identify what you want to get out of this. And I understand that makes sense. But sometimes you just really have to decide that the only thing you need to get out of this is that this isn't going to be like this again.
Right.
And that's something that this will be either an establishment of a new level of relationship or at least a ground setting. But you can't walk in, this is how I want this to go.
Absolutely.
Because it just never does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I call that the third way. Like, why are we even having the meeting if I'm going to do what I'm going to do and you're going to do what you're going to do?
This is it.
Let's
email
together.
it.
Yeah. And then ignore the email. And, the third way is a really powerful way.
I love that. Yeah.
So, oh my goodness. Now, a bit more personally, when you are really stressed out, and if you can just think about, I'm curious about what kinds of situations stress you out, and what do you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah. I mean, it's taken me many years to truly understand what are the things that stress me out. Because I think one of the hallmarks of stress is the inability to identify what the burgeoning feeling is inside you, because it's so additive. But when I really feel that, I find I have to back up. Sounds dumb, but go for a walk. Not be in a work situation for a minute.
Right.
reestablish who I am in my home life, reestablish what I bring to my garden or my dog or my kid or just my friends, recenter myself in a reality that is the alternate, that if everything is going to go wrong with that other thing, I have this. And I always call that the when the zombies come. What's the worst thing that happens when the zombies come? You know, and I've kind of decided the worst thing that happens is my glasses break or I can't get my medication. And it's like, okay, so we're not there yet. And just a de-escalation and a reassertion of what my life priorities for me are at the end of my life and my day.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, are these ghosts you're seeing?
Right.
Or are they real? And I find that a lot of the time it's ghosts. And often the ghosts are there because I feel I have a loss of control over something that I feel I could add value to.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're just having to decide if you watch it go by.
Yeah.
Or if you risk upsetting everyone to jump into it. Those are my real stress moments.
Yeah.
I'm a conflict-averse person. And yet I hate artifice.
Right.
And those two things live in constant opposition.
Yes.
You know?
When does truth triumph and when does avoiding the conflict?
When the person that could get hurt by the truth isn't me,
Yes.
I try harder to avoid the conflict.
I see.
When the conflict is I'm afraid of what someone will think of me, or I'm afraid of losing face, or I'm afraid of losing an ally, I have to just go in.
Yes.
But if it's the other person who is somehow going to walk away from this interaction less than they walked in,
Yes.
I
But could
I
you find a
differ.
way to have that interaction still be truthful? And I'm thinking about a typical situation, right?
Yes.
Someone's not performing.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole different thing.
And or they've got a gap in what
Yes.
they know how to do. And it's going to be really hard to tell them, and they're going to really struggle with that for a while. But ultimately, they need to know. So how can you
do that.
can you frame things? So
Yeah. I think you have to frame things. Actually, I'll give you a specific example because that might be helpful. Maybe if this person's listening, they'll remember this. I worked with someone who was one of the hardest working planners, who truly, I mean, she killed herself every day and was a real asset to a team. And she wasn't progressing. She wasn't getting promoted. She wasn't moving along. And I could tell it hurt her deeply. And every time I would try and kind of rustle up the reason for a promotion, I could tell what I was rewarding was her effort,
Right.
but not the outcome,
Yeah.
which meant that she was always going to be in a situation herself where she was not enough, because it was always going to be reward for effort.
Yes.
And you know, you try and try and try and try and try. And so I try and figure out what is the very specific thing. What hurts people is the surprise of knowing that you don't see them the way they see themselves. And then so already they're taken by surprise.
Yes.
And then the generality of you're just not, you know, it's like, well, no, if they knew, they'd know. So I try and find a very specific thing. And in this instance, this person was amazing with research and data.
Right.
She was not a good writer.
Ah.
And you know, the first act, actually, of the creative act is the planner,
Yes.
which no one likes to admit,
No.
because the planner has the original idea,
Right.
which launches all the ships of the rest of the ideas. And if that person cannot write a narrative that makes my brain spill over, it doesn't matter how hard they work, how good they are at the research, how much they can compile. It's all just a transference of information. And then I try to have an alternate of the thing I think that their great skills would make them extraordinary at.
Right.
And then we try and like pivot and have that conversation. And I either will or will not have an opening for that on my team.
Yes.
But by the end of the conversation,
They're no longer surprised. They have very specific things. I know I either am looking for a job for someone outside or inside my firm.
Yeah.
Or a plan to figure out if you can get to somewhere. I just don't, there are certain things that are talent-based.
Yeah, completely.
That I kind of think you got it or you don't.
And you can help them find something else where their talents will flourish.
Yes. And so those things I find are really helpful. Honesty. The worst thing after a surprise revelation is vagary.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so in that instance, I will. And weirdly, when it's about the work, I'm relentless.
Yeah.
That's just not good enough. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's when it's about the person that it's harder.
But if the work isn't good enough and then you don't win the deal, if the work doesn't get they're going to feel worse.
They're going to feel worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So kindness is honesty.
Yes.
But delivered in a way with total clarity by the time they leave. No one can walk away wondering what else don't I know?
Yeah.
Cannot have that.
And again, positive intent.
Yeah.
Mental health, big issue in the world, but if you just think about your team at SNAP and how do you see how people are doing, how do you help them look after their mental health so that they can live their best lives?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who, I think my career, maybe this is true for everyone, but for me personally, my mental health and my career are a little inextricably intertwined. And what I know is that when I start to lose confidence, everything unravels. And I think I think that is universally true. I think that's why, you said SNAP cares a lot about the mental health of its community. We do. And, it's the performativeness of, like, all those things that we go at. I think that happens in the workplace as well, right? Because we're always on, we're performative, we're there trying to be a role that might be separate from who we are. And I think when I see team members who are just fraying, collapsing the distance between who they are and who they are at work is really necessary.
Right.
So it's like, these are dumb things. I'm not saying I recommend them for everybody, but like, from the time when I was at Wyden, when I arrived at a place where they clearly did not love me.
Yes.
I am
hearing the job none of you got.
Hi, and you don't know me from Adam, and I'm not an Adam, which freaks you out as well, because we're a sports company. No, but I find that you really have to go deep on, I would end every meeting with, okay, and I love you guys. Yes. And people were really taken aback by that. And I remember once someone saying, that just bugs me because, like, you don't love me. I said, well, what do you think my job is here? You are in my care while you're employed here.
Yes.
If I'm going to take good care of you, I have to make the leap and decide I care about your well-being. Right. That is an act of love. We have to love each other. And like you'll see this show up even in our positioning as SNAP. That's why I lean so hard into less likes, more love.
Yeah.
By the end of my tenure there, the funny thing was the crustiest dudes on my team. I mean, one of them works with me now, Eric Baldwin. I remember the first day that we were wrapping a meeting, and he went, love you. And I was like, thank you. But that pulling someone back into a center of you're a human being and I see you and we're here to care for each other. Those kinds of small signals to me really matter a lot. And the vulnerability of walking into a room and just deciding that you love everyone here is disarming.
Yeah.
And that took me a long way, and I think it helped the mental health of my teams because very quickly that gets to people walk into rooms feeling that quickly before a meeting they can say things to me like, look, I know this is a super important meeting. I slept for 2 hours last night. My mom's super sick and I feel really awkward and I have this memorized and prepared, but will you have my back if I'm like, yeah, because I love you. We got you.
Yeah.
And it was just this weird kind of shorthand we developed that said, united.
I understand.
Yeah.
You've made it safe for people. And people use so much energy when they don't feel safe.
Oh, my God.
Other stuff.
The productivity you lose to self-protection
Agreed.
is profound to me.
Well, I can imagine all the legacies you've created already. But I'm curious about what legacy do you want to leave?
Yeah.
Not just at Snap, but when you look back and, the zombies have come, what are you thinking about? I've done this.
Yeah. It would be, honestly, I showed up as myself. And that was scary. And I think, it changes over time. I remember in the beginning, you've been so phenomenal about this. But, someone asked me the other day, how long have you been coming to Cannes? And I was like, this is my 20th year. And I do remember being one of the few women. I remember being on every single jury.
Yes.
Because it's we need one woman, and they were earnestly trying to fix it. But I was the woman. And so for me then, I think I would have answered, I want to show that a woman can show up and do this. And then honestly, I just started a whole new career at 60. That you have more things in you and you don't have to relearn, or you just have to show up again and keep pushing and keep being vulnerable and willing to be killed.
Right.
And I think that's important to me. But then I'm sure that by the time I'm done this, and that's why I bring it all back to I showed up as myself without fear and just kept trying to do the job.
Yes.
I don't want to be a figurehead. I just want to create the space for other people to know they're safe. There was a moment when I did confessions of a female ad exec, and it was anonymous, and people started responding to it. And someone that I respect said to me, "That's great you did that, but it would mean more to women if you said who you were, because then you could show that you did that and you still lived to fight another day."
Right.
And so I did confess that it was me confessing. And that set that standard for just bring yourself.
Yeah.
You can't fake it at a certain level.
Exactly.
It's too much. There's
And
a
that's
job
why-
to be done, and constructing your persona,
Yes.
it ain't the job.
Yes.
And
that's exactly why we do these talks like this. I would have loved to have asked you about Snap and all the things you're doing in the world and your team, some of whom I know.
Yeah.
But I think the service that you have done in talking from the heart and just for me, I can relate so much, but it's a playbook. It's a way of thinking about things differently. That if more people knew, the mask would drop, the tension would go down, and people would see themselves as in services of others.
Yeah.
Then that makes the world a better place. That's a ripple effect.
So I do, because, unless you're literally on the ground in a war,
Yeah.
your sense of fear largely often starts within your own
Yes.
mind. No one was going to shoot me walking down the Croisette.
Yeah.
What was I so afraid of? So yeah, I hope it has a ripple effect.
Thank you very much.
Oh my God,
An
thank
absolute
you.
pleasure.
It's such an honor to do this
Wow.
with you.
Thank
You
you.
set the goal for all of us.
You could have been drinking rosé. You could have
Oh
been
no, I'd
selling,
much rather be doing this.
another customer, but here you are.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.